Today, I have a good one for you. This video is by far the most requested video for me to make. I've received more questions about this topic than any other. So without further ado, what is the best workhorse, everyday rider Japanese fountain pen? Between the Platinum 3776, the Pilot Custom 74, and the Sailor 1911 Large. So let's start with some of the objective basics of these pens, and then I'll talk you through a bit of what I like and what I don't like about each of these. And that will be a very subjective view. And then afterwards, let's wrap with which one of these I think is the winner for ultimate everyday writing pen. If you know, I may be biased, but I'm of the camp that thinks the Japanese makers, these three makers, make some of the best writing pens in the world. So the best everyday writer, the best everyday pen out of these three, which represent the mass-produced, volume models from these three manufacturers. This, in my opinion, really is the best everyday writer in the world. So let's get started. In terms of just basics, let's start with price, because that's the one of the key considerations. The Pilot Custom 74 is the cheapest of these three pens. This video is made in June 2023, so I just looked at the prices today. In Asia, this pen retails for approximately $100 US. And in the US, the market or the street price is $176 if you were to buy this from a US retailer. The next up is the Platinum 3776. In Asia, the rhodium-plated version is a little bit more expensive. The gold-plated version is about $110. The rhodium-plated version is about $130. And here in the US, the rhodium-plated version from a US retailer is $240. I actually don't know when it became so expensive, but $240, that's the street price as of today. And then the most expensive, the Sailor 1911 Large. This in Asia is about $160 or about $180 if you get the zoom or the music nib. And in the US, it is $312. So that is by far the most expensive of the three. So let's talk a bit about each of these pens, and I'll show you a bit about how they write as well as I talk through them. So the Pilot 74, as many of you know if you've watched videos on my channel, this is my favorite pen to just grab. And that's just because this is the pen that I've owned the longest of these three. I've owned this pen since 2015, and it's by far the most used pen in my collection. So what do I really like about this? Well, the first and foremost is the quality and the attention to detail. This pen is extremely well made. It's made with very, very fine tolerances. It feels very nice in the hand. It's very usable. The clip is very, very nice. And the resin they use, this pen, like I mentioned, I've had since 2015, and I've had it inked most of the time since 2015. You can see it's not yellowing. The resin doesn't look old. I used to post this pen. I don't anymore, but I used to post this pen, and there are no scratches on the barrel where I used to post it like that, so it doesn't scratch. And the plating is a very, very nice quality. So even though this pen has been in and out of pen cases, in and out of bags, backpacks, the plating still looks as good as new. There's no rubbing off of the plating. It's all really nice. And even when I mentioned attention to detail, one of the things that I've always appreciated about these Pilot pens is that they come from the factory with the nib oriented so that when you close the pen, it's either perfectly aligned this way or perfectly aligned this way. There's two sets of threads. This pen isn't because unfortunately this pen had a warranty warranty replacement of the nib, so it didn't come back like that. But I've used many custom 74s. I've bought these on behalf of friends many times, and from the factory the nib comes aligned. It's very easy to align it yourself. It's friction fit, but I just appreciate that Pilot took the attention to, or they took the effort to make sure that it's aligned out of the factory, which is something Platinum and Sailor don't do. The other thing that I really like about this pen is if you use the Con 70 converter, it just looks like it was made for this pen. The barrel is exactly the right length. There's no gap in the back. It just feels very seamlessly made. So this pen has a 14 karat nib. It's a Pilot number 5 nib, and it writes well. That's what it looks like. But I will say that the only downside, in my opinion, and the biggest downside about this pen is the nib. Compared to the next two pens that you'll see, this nib feels, it's not bad, but it feels kind of ordinary. And what I mean by that is it doesn't have a lot of character. It's perfectly usable. I can't write and talk at the same time if you haven't noticed. It's perfectly usable, perfectly reliable, but it doesn't have a lot of character. It doesn't have a lot of feedback. It doesn't feel particularly bouncy or springy. It just kind of works, but you can call that reliable. I tend to think it feels a little bit boring, especially compared to the next two that you'll see. The other thing about this nib is this isn't, I wouldn't call this a fault, but this nib doesn't write perfectly well under its own weight sometimes, especially more on the downstrokes. And of course on camera I'm not able to get this for you, but sometimes on the downstrokes the line tends to be a bit dry or a bit light, and it's not a problem with this nib. I've used a bunch of custom 74s, like I've said. This nib tends to do better with a moderate amount of, just a very light amount of pressure when you write. It's not one of those pens that just writes perfectly well under its own weight. So you can sort of see there's some parts of these S's that look a little bit light. I was using a very lightweight there. If you use a little bit of pressure when you write, the writing, this is with light pressure. You see, it's perfectly fine. But that said, I think the major downside when you're comparing against these the titans of the pen world, these pens are all so good, but when you're comparing against these three, the downside of this particular pen is that the nib is not as nice as the other two. So that is the Pilot Custom 74. Next in price is the Platinum 3776, and this pen, let's talk about some of the downsides first. Compared to Pilot, Platinum pens, in my opinion, are not as well made. And that's a combination of the materials used and of the QA. So let's start with the materials. This resin, and I've read all the Reddit threads about resin between, Sailor uses PMMA resin, Platinum uses a different type of resin. There's arguments about which is better. I don't really care. I do have a bit of a material science background back in my college days. The type of resin, yes, there are differences. What matters more is what's in the resin, like what the different what the actual composition of resin is. And I think it's a pointless exercise to debate which type of resin is better, so to speak. But for what it's worth, in my hand, the plastic that Platinum uses feels cheaper to me than Pilot and Sailor. So it just feels harder. It doesn't feel as nice. It just feels like a cheaper, harder plastic to me. So that's a subjective description, but to me, I don't like the way this plastic feels as much as the Pilot and the Sailor. The other thing that is not subjective and is very objective is that this plastic scratches easier. This pen is almost brand new. I don't know if you can tell on camera because it's very faint, but it will get darker over time. This barrel is starting to scratch where I post it. And that brings me to the next point about this pen. This pen is shorter than the Pilot in length, and pretty noticeably so. So whereas the Pilot I can use very comfortably unposted, the Platinum is just a bit too short and a bit too narrow in the back for me to use comfortably unposted. So I do have to use this pen posted to have a comfortable writing experience, but because of that, the barrel will scratch over time. I have another one of these pens that I use much more often. It's a black version with a fine nib, and I've used that one for years, and that pen is completely scratched up all over the place. So this plastic does scratch as well. The plating from a material perspective is just not as well done as Sailor and Pilot. The plating wears much easier over time. This pen, again, is almost brand new, so you're not going to see it on this particular pen. But if you use this pen for a year, a few months, whatever, in and out of bags, the plating will start to wear off. It will start to pit. You'll see pitting across the plating. It just happens. So that's the material quality. In terms of QA, I've had some pretty atrocious examples of Platinum nibs not working out of the box. One 3776 that I bought years ago had half of the tipping just missing, and that was purchased from brand new from an authorized retailer, so don't know what happened there. The other one was not a 3776, but a Platinum President, which is the 18 karat version of this pen, or version of a Platinum pen, similar price point. That pen confused me because it would just keep running dry and then stop writing, and then running dry and then stop writing. I couldn't figure it out, so I finally took it apart, and the feed on the top, it was missing the groove where the ink flowed. I don't know what happened. There was just no groove there. And that was a pen I bought from Asia and had shipped, so it would have been a hassle to replace. So I ended up cutting a groove myself with a razor blade, and that fixed that problem. But it's those like little QA issues that just shouldn't happen on items that are of this price range. So negatives of the pen, the materials, and the QA. But let's talk about the positives. This pen is all about the nib. This is a broad, not much different than the Pilot medium, but this nib is an absolute pleasure to use. It is significantly bigger than the nib on the Pilot 74. They're both 14 karat, but the Platinum nib is significantly bigger. It has just a very pleasant amount of feedback. Not too much, it still feels very smooth, but enough feedback to help you control the nib. It's a very precise nib. And the size of the nib makes it, it's a very stiff nib, but there's a bit of give compared to the Pilot nib, and that gives the nib, in my opinion, a lot of character and just makes this nib a more pleasant nib to write with. And also, it doesn't have the same issue as the Pilot nib in terms of not being able to write consistently under its own weight. This nib just performs super well. And one thing I do appreciate about this nib is it's not a gusher. It's the ink flow is very well moderated. It's not too wet, not too dry. It's just, this pen, in my opinion, is all about the nib. The other thing I will say is that posted, it is very comfortable. It's very well balanced. This cap is huge. So I want to just do a quick comparison to the size of the cap. I don't know how well you can see that on camera. The size of the Platinum cap is significantly bigger than the Pilot. It's a much wider cap because the section of the Platinum pen is wider than the Pilot, and this cap in general is just a very big cap. So when you post it, even though the back of the pen is quite thin, with the cap there, it just feels very, very comfortable in the hand. It's very well balanced and just a very nice pen to use. So negatives are materials and QA, but such a great nib, very well balanced writer. Now, finally, let's talk about this Sailor. This Sailor, it's just a very nice pen overall. There's not a lot of negative things I can say about the fit and finish, the quality. It's got a beautiful 21 karat nib, as opposed to the other pens, which are 14 karat. And very nicely polished, very comfortable in the hand. However, oh, this is the 1911 large. This pen is just really expensive compared to the other two. I was a bit surprised to find that the Platinum 3776 with the rhodium trim retails for $240 in the US now. You can easily get that pen cheaper if you buy it from other channels. But the retail price of this pen at $312 in the US, well, the retail is higher, but the street price of $312 in the US, I think is just asking a bit much. So I don't have any real complaints about how this pen is made, the look, the fit and finish, the quality. It's all there, but I'm not sure about this price. The other thing about this pen as a daily writer, and this is going to be the more subjective part of it, this nib, it has more feedback. I'm not sure if you can hear that on the camera, than the Platinum. And the Platinum has more feedback than the Pilot. So this, it's pleasant, it's not scratchy, it's a very, it's intentional. You can tell this is not bad feedback. It's not a scratchy, misaligned nib, it's not under polished, it's not, it's intentional. However, in my personal opinion, for my personal preferences, this is more feedback than I really want for a daily writer. So those are the two cons of the Sailor. High price, and the nib is a bit more feedback than I prefer for a daily writer. So which of these pens then do I think is the best overall for daily writing? Best EDC pen from Japan. Well, let's do a bit of a process of elimination. I have to eliminate the Sailor. This pen, it feels like they were going more for like a Mont Blanc feel with the price point. It's just, I don't see $312 here. And I was struggling to think, do I compare this, do I compare these pens with the standard 1911 and not the large, because that pen is actually priced more in line with the Platinum and the Pilot, and that one does have a 14 karat nib. But that pen is so small, and that nib is so boring. That 14 karat nib in the 1911 standard and the Pro Gear Slim, that nib, there's just, those two pens don't have any redeeming qualities compared to the 3776 and the Pilot 74, so that it would have been a non-starter. But then comparing this larger pen, which is similar in size to the Platinum and to the Pilot, this larger pen is just way more expensive, and I just don't really see the benefit of spending the extra money as a daily writer. Obviously this is my pen, I spent the money and I bought it, but in terms of picking that daily writer everyday carry, I don't see the value here. And then that with the fact that the nib is a bit more feedback than I want, it's a great pen, but sorry to say this is not the best daily writer. Now, this is going to surprise some of you. This Pilot Custom 74 is my favorite daily writing pen, but it's not the winner here. This pen I bought in 2015. I used to be in management consulting. I traveled an obscene amount for work. This pen has been with me to work in over 15 countries in over 20 states in the US. I've had it's been a companion for me, and it feels like using this pen, it just feels like, when you're traveling, and it feels like when you go home and you sleep in your own bed and you sleep in your own pillow, it just feels familiar. That's what it feels like when I pick up this pen. But that's all very subjective. That's all sentimental. When it comes to picking an ideal daily writer, if I had to do it over again, with trying to get the sentimental side out of my system and just thinking about if I had to pick what is the best daily writing pen, this pen falls a bit short, because the most important part of being a daily writer, having a pleasant nib, is where this pen falls apart. And also, it's a little bit narrower than the Platinum, so it makes it objectively just less comfortable for me to use, even though I'm so used to this pen, and this is the pen I grab most. If I had to think about it from what would I pick if I started this over again, or what would I recommend to a friend, to you, to anyone, in terms of saying what is the best daily writing pen, it's not this one. This is an all-time great, one of my favorites, but it just isn't. It isn't the best daily writer. So that means that, in my opinion, the best EDC fountain pen from Japan is the Platinum 3776. This has just got such a nice blend of size, balance, and this nib is spectacular. So, despite the fact that the materials are not the best, the quality, the QA is not the best, if you have to pick one daily writing pen, workhorse pen from Japan, this is the one I'd recommend. I will add a little caveat though. I wouldn't buy it from a US retailer. $240 it surprised me how much these are going for now. just look around. You can see that you can get it for a lot less. And I'm just gonna end by saying, I know there's the theory or rumor out there that there's risks of buying pens in the US if you don't buy from a US retailer because of warranty issues and whatnot. I don't know that that's true. This pen I bought in Japan, and I had warranty replacement. Maybe Pilot was just being nice to me, but they replaced the nib under warranty in the US. So I don't know. Maybe they'll honor the warranty. Maybe they won't. But here's the argument I will make. You can buy this pen for less than half the price of what US retailers charge if you buy it from Asia, or you buy it from a retailer here that imports it from somewhere else. Less than half the price. So let's say you have an issue with the pen and Platinum doesn't cover it under warranty. You can buy another one and you'd still come out ahead. So what are the chances that you buy two pens and they both have an issue? I think that's pretty, I think the chances are pretty slim. And I actually think there's a chance that even if you had an issue, you could convince Platinum to honor the warranty. But anyway, those are just my thoughts in terms of the risks of buying a pen not from a US retailer. But overall, these three pens are really the best of what Japan has to offer. They're not the most expensive, they're not the most special, but they represent some of the most popular mass-produced models from each of these manufacturers. They are great. It's hard to talk about the cons of these pens. These are three really, really great pens. But as in life, there can only be one winner, and for me, that is the Platinum 3776. So hope that was fun. This is a bit of a longer video than usual. This is one I've been asked to do so many times, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Love to know if you agree or disagree with me. I read the comments, so please, if you agree, disagree, have thoughts on these pens, think another one is better, let me know. I'd love to know. But anyway, thank you for watching. Hope this was a lot of fun, and have a great day.